Jake, would you say that there's a lot to like on this next album?
There is a lot to like on this next album.
Tell us about it.
Stand Atlantic was here, and they certainly are, with their new album, Was Here.
I'd rather be lonely, hate myself than someone you think about. I got a nosebleed if you want me dead, twisting knife while you watch me bleed out.
Not my best transition, I'm gonna be honest, but
Hey, we've had worse.
Stand
Keep it
Atlantic.
Not our worst.
Stand Atlantic had, I would say, very high expectations from both Derek and I.
Unequivocally. Almost impossible expectations.
Impossible expectations is a fantastic way to put it. At some point, the hill is too steep to climb anymore. When you're already at the peak, like, you can only jump so high, you know? Before eventually you jump too high and lose your balance on the way down and take a couple steps back. And I feel like that's kind of what this album is. It's a couple steps back, but it is still a damn good album. And for the most part, I'd say it's a very front-heavy album. A lot of the best songs on this album come in the front half. The opening... Honestly, the opening 5 songs are all phenomenal. Wake Up, Sit Down, Shut Up is a fantastic opener with a really eerie atmosphere to build into. It's almost like you're getting lured in. Like, do you really want to come in and listen to this sort of thing? I don't know. It just has a really cool build to it, and instrumentation's fantastic. Frenemies, fantastic song. Girls, fantastic song.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then you get into I would say Wake Up, Sit Down, Shut Up and Frenemies, and then Freaking Out into Nosebleed are probably 2 of my favorite moments on this album, other than Warzone, which is still my favorite song on this album. But the 1-2 punch of Freaking Out into Nosebleed is phenomenal. Freaking Out into Nosebleed had me thinking, oh, Stand Atlantic are still at the fucking peak, because those 2 songs are so fucking good. It's like just absolutely incredible song. Like, Freaking Out lyrically is fairly simple, but the instrumentation is just so cool. Again, I feel like Wake Up, Sit Down, Shut Up and Freaking Out both have just really cool instrumentation. And Nosebleed is just incredibly catchy with fantastic lyricism as well. It's just such a strong opening to the album. I am all on board for Stand Atlantic. They're making another run to my top 10 albums of the year. Back half of the album kind of takes the foot off the gas a little bit. Not to say that it's bad, but Girls a Gun, Rockstar, Sex on the Beach, Killer is not the strongest ending to an album, in my opinion. I feel like Fear had a much stronger ending with Cabin Fever into Molotov. And I'm just not... I feel like the best way for me to put it is that they just let off the gas a little bit. It's a very front-heavy album, and my god, is that front-heavy. Some absolutely incredible Stand Atlantic songs, but when Fear and Pink Elephant were so phenomenal, like, they did not take their foot off the gas once for years with those 2 albums. And for as good as the front half of this album is, I'm not resonating with the back half as much.
Can I be so for real?
Yeah,
do it.
So for real.
I think 17 Reprise is the best song on this album.
You're so valid for that. I don't agree, but like, I'm up. Yes. Yes. And I want to, in talking about the Reprise, I also want to highlight 17 for being, I feel like a lot of Stand Atlantic songs are candid, right? And they're honest and they're funny and they're just upbeat. But there's always that one on every album. Like, for instance, there's Drink to Drown on, what was that? Pink Elephant. There's Toothpick on, God, what is the name of that album? Lavender Bones? And I forget what the one was on Fear, but I remember it was a fucking banger. 17, I think, is the deepest out of all of them and probably the most heavy in terms of lyrical content. And I think that on an album that is largely a little more punchy than their previous albums, to also have something like that is a really good contrast. It's harder. Yeah, absolutely. I think that candidness is what's missing from this album as a whole. It was really present on Fear and Pink Elephant. The quirkiness of Stand Atlantic has taken a different direction on this album, and I don't think it was pulled off as successfully. And like you said, Jake.
Can I make a counter argument to that?
Yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like the quirkiness is still there. It has just pivoted to being even more lesbian.
Well, I mean,
And as straight white dudes, I don't think we're resonating with that as much.
well,
like,
no, I don't. I wouldn't
maybe
say that because I think
like,
most of the songs on
Straw
here that I
Hat
like,
Boys.
besides "Girl Is a Gun," are like my favorite songs. Are have the we'll say they have the lesbianism. That's what we'll say. But no, I really, I don't know. It's just this album is, you talk about being front heavy, which I agree with. I think sonically, in many aspects, it's just a little too inconsistent. While you had Fear, well, it was all over the place, right, in certain ways, but there was always that cohesion behind everything. And you could always feel like you were listening to the same album and front to back, just taken along for a smooth, albeit a little bumpy ride. Like, you were in it. In this, I think that there are enough moments or tone shifts in the way that the album is organized to the point where, as a whole, it just isn't nearly as strong. And I would have honestly been more surprised if they were able to put something out on the level or better than Fear. I think that the crash was a little bit inevitable, but I will say that what this album does give me hope for is, even if I'm not as high on it, is their next album. Because I think that this kind of heavier side to Stand Atlantic, both in terms of lyricism and instrumentation, we saw a little bit of that on Molotov, right?
And Cabin Fever, too.
And Cabin Fever, exactly. So this is a natural next progression. And if that's the case, there's going to be growing pains. It's too much of a transition that if they'd have pulled it off, I think it would have been more surprising if they didn't. What I do appreciate about this is the obvious earnesty and care that was put into making this album. And I
this
think
feels like a much more
is...
personal album than Fear or Pink Elephant ever were.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Which I think is something that they've now demonstrated that they can have a strong suit in. It's just a matter of how they execute it. If you trim some of the fat off of this, refine some of the, I guess, the different ideas that they have here, we're going to get a really, really good album. And I guess if they're following the same pattern, 2026, or maybe whenever we get it, like even if I don't love the album, it gives me faith for the next one because I know just how talented Stand Atlantic are, and the ideas here are so well done. So hats off to them, I would say.
I want to put some of the lyrics on this album that I really resonated with, just while we're on the topic of how personal a lot of this album feels. From Freaking Out, the I'm up all night, it's a paradise, I'm freaking out, feed me a line like a parasite. I feel like that taps into like drug and frat culture a little bit, and how like you're having what looks like a great time, but on the inside, like, your brain is fucked up. And then Nosebleed, the opening line and chorus of that song, I'd rather be lonely and hate myself than someone you think about. Like, geez, that's harsh, that's brutal, you know? Like, and then Warzone is obviously like the pissed off angry song on the album. The bitch, I'm like a cyclone entering the war zone, say it to my face. You could argue that Warzone is targeted at us because, like, I feel like we've generally been pretty positive on this album. We have our flaws and criticisms of it, but you can argue that, like, Blonde's about to come into our stream chat here, like, what the fuck are you criticizing my album about? Like, bitch, I'm like a cyclone entering the war zone. Fuck y'all. And then you also get the front row seat to my breakdown. Nothing ever feels like it should now on Freaking Out, I think, as well. I really liked that, and the delivery of that as well was fantastic. And then I'm not going to get into the lyrics on 17. If you are really curious, you can go look at them for yourself. It is not an easy song to listen to.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely not.
It's hard to listen to. It's hard to process. I don't really have many other words to say about that one, in all honesty. It's a shame that a song like that even has to be written, but
Yeah.
the world's a fucked up place sometimes, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, overall, like, my final conclusion is they took their foot off the gas a little bit, but Stand Atlantic, their floor is still so high that even when they take their foot off the gas, you're still given an incredible album.